The Square Ball Podcast.
Welcome to the show. Brought to you with Levi Solicitors, 10% off your legal fees. levisolicitors.co.uk/the square ball. Usual three of us with you. Dan, Michael, and Moscow White as well. This is available on both YouTube and on your podcast app. If you are watching the YouTube version, you'll spot that Moscow has a Christmas jumper on. Do you want to talk us through that?
I had to put some clothes on, so this is the clothes I'm wearing.
He's got leather chaps on. You can't see those on the video. Just making use of what he's got.
Well, you should get one of our new T-shirts, Moscow. It's got the dancing. Are they scoreboard aliens or are they eggs?
Both.
Whatever you want them to
Both
be.
Dancing things from the 90s.
Yeah, nice retro callback on the front of a T-shirt. You can find that on our merch store. Before we get into the show proper, just to let you know about TSB Plus, if you're not yet a member, you can get discounts on our merch, including that new T-shirt, fancy. And you can also get extra shows. We do the Extra Ball for members as well, which is a bonus show. This week, we are talking about Wolves, not Wolves from the other week, but mudslinging Wolves. The Wolves of Kevin Muscat and, dare I say it, Don Goodman.
The killing our FA Cup dreams, which never really did come back, did they, after that? So.
No, and here's a little sample of that. It's a better show than it was a game anyway.
But then it escalates into violence quite quickly because there's the headbutt and then Keith Coe grabs Hasselbank's face in a very firm way, you'd have to say. He's obviously...
It's not a tender loving embrace.
In the same way as you might grab a dangerous dog to stop it biting, he kind of fully clamps his mouth on it, and Goodman comes in going, whoa!
That's just reminded me of that urban myth that if you have a dangerous dog trying to bite you should put your finger up its arse. I wouldn't have tried that with Hasselbank. Wouldn't have gone down well.
Curl's
or Keith Curl for that matter.
Curl is not happy, and his grip on the maw of Hasselbank, and then the eyes he is staring at him with have got all the suggestions of he is about to tear Jimmy Hasselbank into little pieces.
Some classic memories to enjoy that with us again. And it is a good show. You'll find that over on the Extra Ball this week. Discounts on the merch, as we mentioned. To check out the details of that, thesquareball.net/plus our membership packages. And straight into the news, and starting off with some sad news as well. It's never nice when this happens, is it? When one of the old guard passes away. But Peter Gumby, who was the Leeds coach in the 1980s, has died at the age of 87, and probably from an era where coaches sort of stayed at clubs, whether managers were still there or not, seemed to just be there in the background, kind of just nicely chugging along. But Peter Gumby, to me, I think we're all of a generation where we had posters on the wall, and he was always one of those guys in the tracksuits on the posters, like you had the manager in the middle, the players in the kits, and then just at the edges you had like Alan Sutton, who was the physio, and Pete Gumby was there as well.
Yeah, there weren't many coaches in those days either. It wasn't a Bielsa situation where you had 20 backroom staff arriving with him. It was more of a kind of bibs and balls approach to coaching in those days. But yeah, he was there through a very long period of time. Was Peter?
Yeah, it's quite hard to actually put the dates on it. He first shows up on the team photos about 1980, and he's still there in the 1990s. But his influence was kind of one of the things he did aside from coaching was. He was basically hosting youth players for a while. They would live in his house in the kind of the transition from them living in local B&Bs to Thorpe Arch having purpose-built accommodation that then got sold off as everything fell apart. A big house with Pete Gumby and his wife looking after all the youth players, which is why a lot of the tributes on social media over the last few days have been people like Alan Mabry and Andy Cousins and Mark Jackson and Kevin Sharp and Brian Dean, who would have known him from the 80s. A kind of generation of good FA Youth Cup winning players before the O'Leary's babies lot came along, that kind of the little transition bunch of kids that we thought might be the future. And are now, Mark Jackson's a coach with Leeds now, so comes full circle, and a player as well. I don't think he made any first team appearances, but he was a youth player at Leeds a long time ago. And some people just as part of the furniture, and a name that frequently gets spelt wrong. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why people always kind of remember him, is because there's this fixed debate, or not a debate, but this fixed kind of conversation that happens where people go, "Oh, Peter, you remember Peter Gumby?" So we're like, "No, it's Gunby." No, it's got to be Gumby. So I can remember having that argument over the years as to whether it's Gunby or Gumby, and it's Gun, as in gun. But he was always, that would always be kind of mixed. It was like when Gary Kelly first broke through and he had 2 R's in the Rothmans. So it was forever you'd get posters with Gary Kelly on, and occasionally a picture of Noel Whelan if you wanted a real big mistake. So it was hard to get things right back in the day, but I don't think Pete Gumby ever did anything wrong.
Matt Kilgallen as well. That was another one that constantly was wrong.
Kilgannon and all those. Just actually, you wrote the book, obviously, Moscow on Leeds United's history, so you may well know the answer to this better than me. Is it true that the youth players for a bit were put up in Bill Fotherby's old house?
Yeah. The sort of the ins and outs of that were quite controversial, I think, because he had a big house in Roundhay and sold it to the club so that the club could then use it as accommodation for youth players. Obviously, some people pointed out that Bill did quite well out of that deal because the club bought his house from him
for £50 million
and gave him the money. I'm sure it was all market price, and he, other people always tell you, like, anything he earned from Leeds was a fraction of the money that he brought into the club. He was on when he became in the mid-90s the highest paid football club executive in the country, it's because he was on a percentage of the commercial deals that he did. So he was always like, they're not paying me a wage for this. I am generating so much money that I'm making all this money. But yeah, so and that's I believe the house that Pete Gumby and his missus moved into. So you'd look after all these kids in a rambling mansion in Roundhay.
Very nice. And on to today's executives then, and something they appear to be doing. These leaked photos of the Bielsa bucket as a tribute to him, along with a load of other benches that appear to be there to be commemorating the promotion. If I could perhaps sum it up in one single phrase, what do you reckon?
I mean, as an idea, it's fine. The execution's lacking a little bit. I mean, with the bucket thing, do we know if this is the thing? Because they said there was going to be a lasting tribute to him. Is this the thing, or is it just a thing?
I hope it's a thing.
Because if it's a thing, I'm kind of all right with it. If it's the thing, it's a bit shit.
I sort of quite, dare I say, quite like it as an idea. I think it's quite nice in the sense that, whether you think it's tasteful or not, it's something that every fan can kind of go and enjoy. It's an inclusive thing, not an exclusive thing. You can go get your photo on it, and it's going to put you mentally in touch with the Bielsa era, isn't it, when you go and sit on it and get your photo. So I quite like it from that perspective. In terms of marking a promotion, feels a bit weak.
Well, it depends what its purpose is for, and I think I don't like it because its purpose seems to be arse covering more than anything else. It was the one thing that stuck out like a sore thumb in the statement about parting company with Marcelo Bielsa, when at the end they were like, plans for a permanent tribute to Marcelo at Elland Road are underway. More information will be released in due course. You just sacked him. And I think whatever they did, whether it's a statue or a bucket or, naming something after him, it's been a month since Bielsa was standing in front of the cameras after the Spurs game talking about how he was going to put this right in the rest of the season, while the rest of the world knew that Jesse Marsch was flying in to replace him. And I don't think it's compatible to go from that to a month later, like, but we do want to do a tribute, though. It feels like an attempt to kind of mollify the anger that was being generated from sacking such a good person. And anything they do, as far as I'm concerned, I just don't think they should do anything. I think it's just not something that you can easily solve when you have just sacked the person. And we already have the mural in Wortley, there's a mural on Hyde Park Corner. There are fan tributes around the place to Bielsa, and if the fans wanted to do something, fine. I just think putting it on the kind of the to-do list of people whose previous to-dos was to sack him in the midst of and send him home in tears is kind of like, but we're putting a bucket outside the pavilion, Marcelo, so it's all right that we sacked you now, isn't it? Like, that's okay. It just, from that point of view, I just don't think it works at all. The two things aren't compatible, so they should just, my preference would be, don't do anything.
Well, they haven't done anything for Wilkinson, have they? Just going back to that sort of late 80s era.
Well, then he got sacked. And it's kind of at what point it needed somebody else then to do it, but you couldn't have had...
Ken Bates opened a restaurant.
Well, I mean, you couldn't have had in 1996 Bill Fotherby sacking Howard Wilkinson and then saying, but we're going to, name the training ground after him or anything. But it's just... I don't think you get to do the two things. You have to just own the fact that in this situation, as the board, you are the bad guys, and then trying to, but we're going to do a little thing for him.
I suspect, I might be wrong, I suspect this was getting done anyway, and the two might not be related. I don't think they've necessarily pushed the button on this, having thought, we better do something. I wonder if this was probably in the pipeline anyway.
I mean, with the benches and stuff, there obviously is the one for kind of commemorating Peter Lorimer and Norman Hunter and that lot, so there's that bench, and then there's a separate one, isn't there, for the promotion bench. Seems to be a separate one, I think, because there's one with Player of the Year awards on one side and then how the league was won on the other, I guess. So you can't really tell exactly how all these things fit together because it's just still images. But I think that's two benches. So I wonder if one of those was kind of in the pipeline anyway, and if the bucket is an afterthought.
Well, I think one of the benches needs to go in the bin because they've got the date wrong on the Swansea game.
Well, and then also there's the dates of... I don't even know why you put the date of death of... the players that are being commemorated. I mean, this is very nitpicky, but if you're going to do it right.
If there are nits, let's pick them.
For Norman Hunter, for example, it already says 1943 to 2020. I don't know why you would then put 17th of April 2020 underneath as the day that he actually died, because it doesn't feel particularly relevant. And then Norman Hunter, Trevor Cherry and Jack Charlton each have the year written as 20, and then Peter Lorimer has his year written as 2021. So those don't match up. And
God, that's shit, isn't it? I hadn't spotted that.
Yeah, and even, I mean, it's very nitpicky, but even the sort of the Player of the Year awards side, I don't know why it's relevant that Robbie Gotts played 2 app. It says because he won the Academy Player of the Year, Robbie Gotts 2 app. Pablo Hernandez has his assists written. Nobody else has their assists on there. Luke Ayling's volley is goal of the year. Then he has 38 app, 4 goals underneath, and the things aren't really relevant. It's just not a very good job. But it's it's part. I mean, it looks like it's an extension to Centenary Square, which is outside the pavilion.
That's what makes me think these were maybe in the pipeline anyway, because it does fit in with all of that, doesn't it?
But it's strange. I mean, the bucket part of it. Can you imagine if Bielsa was still here? Are they going to ask him to unveil that?
Go put your ass on this, Marcelo.
Because and even now he's not here, how do they unveil that? Do they send Jesse Marsh to do it instead? We've got a bit of a club function going. And even if you sent, Liam Cooper as the captain, if he unveils this, and then the next questions are, so do you miss him? It's a really awkward thing, which would be avoided if the statement about parting company, they didn't use the word sacking, even though they sacked him. If they'd not put in, we'll put a permanent tribute to Marcelo at Elland Road, they just left that alone. But it felt like, that's in there to kind of appease people. And now they have to follow through on this appeasing action. And I don't think it will really work, because half the people, I think there was an idea, and I don't know if it came through, but there was going to be the trust were going to put some seats in Wetherby, or they were talking about it, or we had a conversation down the pub. But it was these kind of things, like you can have a little seating area and people can sit, and they could be buckets and you can discuss things. It's all fine. It makes sense. But some people would rather have a statue. Some people would rather do something else. It's the problem that always comes up with tributes of this kind, is that they're never good enough. And then it comes down to the fact that, well, if you liked him that much, you shouldn't have sacked him.
He might be going to Bolivia anyway now. That's the latest rumour, isn't it?
Just on the bucket, you did point out to me yesterday, Moscow, as well, that the quote around it, there isn't enough space for him to put the full quote on, because we've only seen a still of it. But yes, it is obviously just going to say, a man with new ideas is a madman.
Yes.
At the end.
It has that written around it. For anybody who hasn't seen the picture, it's it looks like it's made of stone with a bit of a kind of a weird groove, and then written around it beneath the Leeds badge is a we can see a man with new idea, and then presumably going around the other side, ideas is a madman, but there is not room to then add until his ideas triumph. So it's kind of like...
There might just be. It depends how close it comes around to joining up. I really hope so.
Just kind of goes above the line, or just scrunch it up a little bit to try and get it on, or do it in a spiral.
It says until his ideas prosper and then eventually sort of tail off, and then we have to sack him. That's what the full quote says.
Until his ideas stop working.
Yeah. Until we lose all faith in him and we decide to get rid of him, but just have a bucket hanging around to pretend that we never that wasn't us.
I feel like you're not over it, Moscow. Can I just say?
Well, I'm not really.
I know, you don't need to go into it. What I was going to say was, let's try and be grown-ups about this, because we're poking it with a stick.
It's constructive criticism that they could do with maybe just like kind of carving the whole thing again.
I was going to say,
how expensive is granite?
Binning it off. Is it granite?
Is it poured resin?
I'd say it's granite. Isn't that granite?
That'd be very, very heavy.
It looks like a kitchen worktop.
It's not going to be solid granite, though.
No, probably not.
Half an inch.
A concrete block with some granite fascia on it or whatever. But yeah, and now you've started pointing out the little minor errors with it. I'm really annoyed by all of it. I want it to go away.
It just lets it down, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of, you want that stuff to be right. And
it's daft stuff like how the league was won underneath. It says top goal scorer Bamford, all in white, and then in brackets in gold. In brackets, why? 16?
Yeah, nobody else's goals are in brackets.
I don't get it.
So everybody, whenever the goals are written elsewhere, it's all, and it kind of, it reminds me of, you know, when like kids write essays and they write them how they think they should be written, or like you set kids like a school project to write a newspaper, so they do it in kind of what they think is a newspaper voice.
Right.
There's an element of that where it's like, so with the, you know, the dates for Norman Hunter, where somebody thinks that you put the date of death on something like this, but if you actually looked at a really good tribute that was done properly by people who know what they're doing, it wouldn't be done like that. The people just think that's the right way to do it, but it's not the thing that they're good at, so it kind of falls apart like that. It's the same with like gavels in courtroom. If you ask a kid what happens in court, they say, oh, well, the judge slams a hammer and goes, order in the courtroom, order in the courtroom. It's like, that doesn't happen.
Not in the UK, it doesn't, does it?
No, it doesn't happen anywhere. It's just, it's just a cliched idea of what people think happens. So it ends up kind of, that filters through when a project like this comes up and people don't really kind of have a full grasp of how to do it. But, you know, 10 out of 10 for trying, I guess.
I've just mentioning Bielsa and Bolivia. I googled Bolivia just while you were talking there, and one of the first things that pops up on the right hand side when you Google it in your Google results is plan a trip. And I'm thinking, if Bielsa does go to Bolivia, I mean, you've been to South America, Michael, haven't you?
I've been to Bolivia, yeah.
What's it like?
Bolivia's mental.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's really strange.
In what way? Tell us.
Just like there were markets with dried llama fetuses on. That was weird.
Yeah.
Just mental.
Did you buy one?
At junctions in La Paz, they didn't seem to have any traffic lights. People just beeped the horns and then went through. Which seemed unsafe.
Oh, well, no, actually, there's that system in some towns in the Netherlands where they've taken out all road markings and stop signs and stuff and allow people to use their common sense.
I'll be honest, it seemed dangerous when I was there. When I was there, and the cars would reflect a road system that doesn't work as well. They're very battered. Right. But it'd be good, wouldn't it? I'd be surprised if they had enough money for a Bielsa, truthfully, because they're not exactly a successful international team. And what wasn't he earning, like £19 million a year or something daft at Leeds with all of his coaching staff?
Yeah, so it was like 12 million or something, I don't know.
I'll just go somewhere.
It's a big gap we probably need to settle, because it would be
lots of millions.
The square ball say.
We're just saying it was lots of millions, that was all. But yeah. If we don't get quoted, let's not get quoted on that.
No, it'll be many multiples.
It was somewhere between no millions and lots of millions, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. But it'll be a hell of a lot more than Bolivia's previous and current manager, if indeed they have one.
La Paz is 12,000 feet above sea level. 3,500 metres. Were you gasping for air?
Very headachy.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal. I mean, ideally, I'd like him to go somewhere a bit nearer so we can go. Like a nice European city that I've not yet been to. It would be my actual aim.
How do you fly to La Paz? Can you get there from the UK?
La Paz is, because it's at altitude, a lot of, I think international...
So the plane doesn't have to drop as far?
Yeah, but I think international flights often don't go directly there. I think sometimes you have to change somewhere. I might be wrong. Or maybe that's changed in the 20 years.
I am on skyscanner.net. So.
I mean, let's wait till he's appointed, I would say, before you book any flights.
I'm not going to book him. I'm just going to investigate. But it gives us something to watch, doesn't it? If he goes there, we can...
He does seem quite a long way from going there, to be fair. The quotes...
He's in Argentina. That's closer than Leeds.
The quotes from the Bolivian FA president were along the lines of, now that we definitely cannot qualify for the World Cup, we are looking for a new coach, and Bielsa is somebody that we're talking to. And then it was kind of qualified. I was like, well, we're not actually talking to him. We'd like to talk. We have inquired about whether we could talk to him, and then we would have to. This
is not the meeting. This is a preliminary chat about the meeting,
and then we would have to look at the budget that we would be able to make available to him, and all that. So I think it rolled back a little bit, but there is because of his status and because of him being out of work. And because of the cycle of World Cup qualifying being where it is, I'm sure he was linked to Colombia as well. And there's lots of countries and clubs across South America who, if they're doing a managerial change, are either having to deny. They're all being asked, would you employ Marcelo Bielsa now he's available? And the Bolivian FA have gone, yeah. But then I don't know if he'll get much further than that. But you never know.
It seems a bit like a trek. I've just sort of the cheapest on Skyscanner's come out at £1,260. Journey time of 29 hours and 38 minutes. It's not direct. We appear to be going via Madrid and Santa Cruz, Viru Viru, and VVI Bolivia. So there's a couple of, I don't know exactly what any of that means. There's one that goes via Miami.
It sounds more difficult than going to see Pablo.
Bit of a faff is what I would say.
Okay. Cheap when you get there, though. So pluses and minuses. Yeah,
everything seems to be 2 or 3 stops. So there's no direct London to La Paz. So
what about Leeds to La Paz? Fuck London.
I'm sure there's a daily flight from Yeadon Aerodrome, isn't there? Out to
should be
to La Paz,
Church Fenton to La Paz.
To Bamford then, and confirmation of the injury is plantar fascia.
This one out, didn't they, on a Sunday night?
Sunday night is the place.
No one was expecting this.
As it was pointed out to us on Twitter, Sunday night is the place that bad news goes to die.
As if Sunday nights aren't already bad enough. I mean, the Sunday scaries are a thing, aren't they? Everyone stressing about going back to work
when we've got
Monday, the weekend over, especially on an international weekend when it's such a dreary time anyway.
We've got a diagram here on our sheet of the foot, I believe that is.
That is the foot, correct.
The foot.
Well, full marks, yep.
Side on. Yep.
I just put it onto, just so we know exactly what it is.
This thing, calcaneus, there's one of them.
Yeah, I think there's
a talus and a navicular.
It attaches to that. It's the band across the bottom of his foot anyway.
How's your cuneiforms looking?
Good, yeah. Never been better.
Are your phalanges fine? Or have you just got the one phalange?
That's the end bit, yeah. Yeah, no, they're all...
That's the dangly bit.
All in order.
At the end.
All in order still.
And your metatarsals, obviously everyone knows what metatarsals are because Beckham invented them, didn't he?
And Rooney had one at some point as well.
But yeah, it's the big stretchy bit from your heel to the front of your foot. Bit sore, that.
It's not that surprising that he's out for ages because they played it right down after the Wolves game. But I mean, he looked pretty knackered as he went off, and the fact that he was running and then suddenly not made you think, oh, something's kind of pinged there.
He looked like he'd stood on Lego or a plug, an upturned plug at that moment. And I know Wolves were into some of the dark arts, but I don't think they were getting into distributing Lego and or upturned plugs at Molineux. But has anyone seen any video evidence to disprove it? That's what I want to know.
The Wolves fans, it was anti-Wolves conspiracies, wasn't it? Never mind, the other way around. But yeah, he's pretty much out for the season, isn't he?
Yeah, because he's not coming back in from what we could just say is a ripped foot. He's not going to be sprinting back in for the final week of the season.
No, he doesn't need surgery though. That was the good news. Although this is when we get to summer and go, he doesn't need surgery.
What we found out is we've sawn his leg off below the knee, just as a precaution. So unfortunately, Patrick is going to be out for a sustained period. It does make you wonder, doesn't it, if, as the information said, he's been carrying this plantar injury for 12 months, why we were so reliant on him and no other strikers.
Tyler Roberts, I guess, was the backup, wasn't it, at one point?
Broken.
And then we signed Dan James, who, while we didn't think we were signing a striker, Bielsa obviously thought he could play there, so maybe, I guess, he was maybe the backup option as well if we thought there was a doubt over him.
Played there for Wales the other night against Austria.
And got pelters galore, didn't he?
He actually played really well. It's just he can't finish.
Yeah.
That's the crucial thing that's missing from his game. And then
at least he's consistent.
And then he limped off a few minutes from the end.
Stuart Dallas limped off as well, didn't he?
Did he limp?
Northern Ireland.
Dallas is always fine. I mean, he
just
limped,
gaffer tape it back together.
He limped on. That's the way Stuart approaches these things.
So
it's hard to tell with. I mean, the details are sparse on Pat, despite having the full Sunday evening shattering statement. The thing with your plantar injuries is that you can have it but not realise that's what it is. It can sort of disguise itself as a morning ache. So when they're saying he's been playing with this for 12 months, I'm wondering how much of that is kind of a retrospective kind of, that's what it's been until now. And it's something that can be played through. It's sort of wear and tear and can arise for various reasons but you'll sort of get these like microscopic tears that will start to cause...
You've been looking into this, like, properly?
Yeah. That will cause pain, but you won't necessarily know what it is. And sometimes a common problem is that athletes who have it won't say anything because they'll just think it's a morning ache, and you say, oh, well, okay, and you just go in and say, oh, my heels hurt a bit, and they're like, all right, carry on.
Run it off.
On. Yeah.
I once had a problem with mine, and it was because I discovered this when looking into it. My metatarsal stroke phalanges are too long. My middle toes are weirdly long compared to my big toe, which means more pressure goes through the middle of your foot.
Show me your toes.
All right, Paul Scholes.
You gonna have a nibble?
I might do.
And then I'll put them on the floor. Look.
So
look. See, my middle toe, my second toe is longer than my big toe.
Oh yeah, you're one of those freaks.
Yeah, I've got a Greek foot. Is what it's also known as.
It can be. So if you do have like slightly odd feet or an unusual gait, then over time it can cause wear and tear on the plantar fascia, and then this microscopic tearing is the condition of fasciitis. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah, I think so. Dr. Chapman.
And then the thing with his injuries so far this season has been, it was his ankle first, wasn't it? Then his hamstring, then his quad, and it's because. Well, I'm not saying it's because, but one thing that can happen is the effect of the kind of the compensation to get around the plantar injury is sort of other muscles have to do other things to work around it. And so if you have an ankle injury and that's causing your foot a lot of pain, nobody's necessarily going to be looking in detail at the plantar fascia to say, oh, maybe that's the problem. And as for the surgery thing, there's a toss-up between. There's two things. One is that there's some debate about whether injections to play through it with the to ease the pain can then cause it to snap. So, but there's not the cause and effect kind of studies.
The old racehorse approach where you pump them full of hormones.
Yeah, basically, and people aren't sure if it's the steroid injections actually cause it then to snap, or if it's just like the extra wear that you then carry on playing with it is the thing. But playing on through it, eventually you get to the point where it can just go ping, and it's a toss up as to whether, when they say it doesn't need surgery, the effect of it going ping is actually pretty much the same as what the surgery would be. The surgery would be they would put you under anaesthetic, and in a controlled environment the doctor would make it go ping, or the surgeon. So the same thing happens, and then it's just a matter of how long you wait until it repairs, and it can actually be a good thing in the long run, is that to fix it you have to rupture it, whether that's by a surgeon or in this case it's by Jesse Marsh, sending him out
a good
broken foot.
A good motto for life: to fix it, you've got to rupture it.
Yeah,
I like that. I'm not bothered about this anymore. I want to know about Michael's plantar. How is it?
It's been all right recently,
yeah,
but that's because I'm not trying to. So I got around my issues by buying some better shoes and not doing much exercise.
Yeah. So how does that sort of mesh in with the 92-mile walk we're doing in about 8 weeks for charity?
We'll see how it goes. I've done like 15, 16 miles. And it's been all right.
I'm not rooming with you, am I? It's fine. I don't want to hear you fucking moaning. Me plantar. You're not Pat Bamford.
No, it's been all right though. So we will see. As long as Jesse March gets nowhere near it, hopefully it'll be all right.
I'll be hopping along on that walk, won't he?
It is there is a genuine thing with the Marsh/Bielsa approach, because the way to fix it, if you don't snap it, and even after you do snap it, is just to let it heal completely. And so when Bielsa was saying earlier in the season, like about Bamford and about Rodrigo, and it sounded like, I'm not sure if Struijk had the same thing, but Rodrigo has said he had the same thing, where it's like he has a pain in his heel, and once the pain goes, he will be okay again.
That's what Rodrigo said, wasn't it, in the interview? Yeah.
But we can't predict when the pain will go, is absolutely true. What it seems that Marsh has done with Bamford, and possibly with Calvin and Cooper being on the bench, is to say, well, if it's only hurting a bit, we'll put you on the pitch anyway. We had him for 10 minutes, available for 10 minutes at Leicester, so it's not to say that he would have got any better with Bielsa's style of waiting as long as possible and then being cautious about bringing him back. But it's hard not to say that, or hard not to think that putting him out to play in the condition he was has perhaps been a contributing factor to him ending up in the situation.
Can't help, can it? But as we all know, that famous maxim, you've got to rupture it to fix it. So that's
and the flip side of that is that the two best periods we've had with Marsh have coincided with Bamford being on the pitch. So we needed him back to play well.
Can we send him out there even if he don't play? As he maybe put his foot into a strap. Just be there.
One roller skate.
Yep, that'll do fine. Speaking of ruptured things, do you see Josh Warrington's X-ray, by the way, after his fight?
Well, you've seen his video with his face as well. He's got a very big face, hasn't he? After his
and he was the guy who won.
Yeah,
Christ.
A good video of Liam Cooper in his changing room putting his hand around his neck and smacking his face. And
that was really soft.
That's exactly what Josh said. He was like, "Oh, mate, me jaw."
But no, did really well.
Good atmosphere as well, wasn't it? I mean, I didn't go down there, but
Rob, sometimes of this podcast, was down there, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, and he wrote about it on the blog. So if you go on our website, there's Rob's write up. He didn't mention in that the one of the biggest fights on the undercard seems to be in the crowd. That distracted a lot of people, but yeah, world champion again,
and another poor performance by a Spaniard called Kiko in Leeds, etc., etc.
Yeah, I don't know if he was poor, but it's
lost, didn't he?
I can't remember.
What was it Billy Bremner said? You get a note for coming second?
I can't remember seeing Josh going after somebody that quickly at the start of a fight before. He was definitely, it was career on the line for him in a way, wasn't he? He would have been in trouble if he'd not won that fight. So he started it as if he meant to win it, and then
all seems like a lot of bother, doesn't it?
Once his jaw was broken, decided it was time to finish it. Yeah. So
my jaw really hurts.
Not to mention his left hand being broken as well.
But you can't fix it without rupturing it, can you? The old left hand.
Yeah, I think my jaw's never been broken, and I'm happy to leave it that way. It functions. It seems to work all right as it is, so I'm not going to rupture it. No. Ideally, anyway.
Good. I'm pleased about your plantar as well. That's the best news today, really, in many ways. Leeds United women as well, back to winning ways. They were playing a lot of pensioners, weren't they? The old Norton and Stockton ancients, etc. Brown and Underdown with the goals after 2 successive defeats, back to winning ways, which is good. Are they playing at Tadcaster now? Because last time we heard, Tadcaster was underwater.
They're back at Tadcaster, yeah.
Has that now drained?
They have played at Tadcaster since, and then they're off to Welland Road for the last home game of the season, 10th of April, Sunday, versus Alnwick Town, who they need revenge over because Alnwick knocked them out of the Plate Cup.
Yeah, yes.
The Plate Cup Shield.
Yeah. The good old Plate Cup.
So 10th of April, 2 o'clock kickoff, free for season ticket holders and members, £5 for adults, £2.50 for everyone else.
And just before that, on the Thursday before that, they're in the West Riding County Cup final against Brighouse Town, who are from the division above, and that's at Woodlesford, it's a good night out. It is. I've been to a couple of the County Cup finals there, and it's atmospheric. There's under the lights. The pitch is huge. It's the FA County headquarters, and it's kind of middle of nowhere. Apologies to the good people of Woodlesford.
I'll have you know it's on the direct train route from Pontefract, so it's basically the centre of the universe.
To where? Hades?
To Leeds.
Right.
Put it this way, the pitch isn't.
Well, fair enough.
So you are out in the sticks a bit from civilization, but it's
so is Pontefract. To be fair, to be fair,
but it's good. It should be so. That should be a chance of silverware. Brighouse is strong. I don't know how they're doing this season, but they are in the division above, and they've always been.
And quite frankly, Brighouse they've got no good reason to be in the division above Leeds United women. Quite frankly, with all due respect to Brighouse, let's sort that out.
You're going for Brighouse like we went for Brentford. Just there'll be a backlash.
Well, there you go. That wraps up part 1 of the show this week. Then into part 2, we will be previewing Southampton and a big weekend ahead for Leeds United.
The Square Ball Podcast.